ridicularia. There exists no malady of modernity more wearisome than this perennial penchant for the microscopic at the expense of the macroscopic. A misplaced gravitas lavished on the trivial while the leviathan of reality hulks unnoticed. RFK Jr., with his fervid crusade against diaphanous demons like toxica additiva and the spectre of carcinogenous in extremis, emerges as the arch-hierophant of this disproportionate absurdity.
I hate that I'm explaining this because everybody knows this intuitively, okay? I hate that I'm explaining this because I wish there was a way to talk about magnitude like in a very snappy, quick sense, because people are very good at using magnitude to like pretend that a thing is more important than it is. I'm gonna do what I think in my mind, but be aware that I could be wrong on this, okay? I'm not a formal nutritionist or dietitian, right? But if I had to imagine, okay, if somebody asked me, what do you think contributes to like the overall health of a human being physically, okay? The overall health of a human being. I'm probably going to think of things like I might say that like your genetics are going to probably play a decent-ish amount. I don't know, I'll put it right here, okay? I'm probably going to say things like your like the food that you eat, okay? I'll just have diet, like broadly speaking, I'll say like right here. Actually, I will make this bigger probably. I might say things like physical activity. You can call it working out, exercise, staying on your feet, or whatever. I probably make this like fairly big right here. And then maybe I'll, what else? I should label these, right? I probably have getting enough sleep is a really big one, like right here. And then we can call this, I don't know, miscellaneous. I don't know. Maybe I would reapportion these a little bit. But the issue you have, this is a huge thing with RFK, okay, is people will correctly identify like a thing and say that it's a problem, but it's like a subset of a subset of a subset of a thing. So when you look at the overall health of Americans and some guy wants to talk to you about like red dye 27, like the food that you eat, especially like of all the foods that you eat, let's see how much we can trigger chat. Let's say that this, we're going to call green diet, okay? We're going to call green diet. Of what makes you healthy for the food that you eat, I'm going to like section off this much here, and I'm just going to call this like this, like all of this. I would just call this macros, and I'll include calories and macros, right? Are you a fat? Do you roughly get about as much protein, carbs, or fat as you need to survive, right? That's probably, honest to God, like 70% of your physical health that comes from your diet, okay? If you want, you can also get into things like toxins or micronutrients are important, especially if you have a deficit in something, right? But as long as you like this is probably like the majority of it, okay? But also, there are going to be things up here that also matter. Like there could be toxic additives to your food. Maybe you're eating too much fish. It has mercury or whatever. They do affect you, right? It's not good. Maybe your food has too much of a particular chemical. Then in high amounts, it's going to be like toxic over long periods of time or might increase whatever, right? Sure, that's fine. But people like RFK will take these micro categories and they'll talk about it's like explaining the totality of American health problems. Like if you were to implement every single thing that RFK talks about in terms of like cutting down on certain like bromellite, formaldehyde, whatever the random, if you were to take all of those things and implement every single one, that would, in my totally uneducated estimation, okay, that would probably save you 1/100th of the health-saving effects of like a sugar tax. Like if you were to tell people, oh, hey, by the way, ultra-processed foods and sugars, they're going to have a 100% tax on them. Get that one thing alone where people are like, oh, well, time to eat less of that and time to eat food that's more satiating. That would probably save you 100 times more than this. But then the issue is when you fight against these people, you'll go out and you'll fight against the people like the RFKs, and they'll say, well, actually, this is a toxic thing. And then they'll like show you a I tried to look this up last night because I was talking to a friend about this last night. And RFK said something about something. And I Googled it to try to find, okay, well, what is this, like, what this guy references, what are we talking about? And I found an article in like NBC, and it was like January of this year, and the researcher guy was saying that it might be the case that in high enough amounts, this thing could be carcinogenic. And it's like, if you want to reduce like chance of cancer, eat less red meat, right? That's like a thing that I'm pretty sure has been extensively studied by this point. And people know, I think there's a very high like correlation between like, I think it's all-cause mortality and cancer rates for red meat. You don't even, and that's it. Like that's like, I think, I'm pretty sure for red meat. That's just like a thing that, yeah, I don't know. The hyperfixation on these like points where they're not necessarily wrong, but they have the magnitude completely off. And that drives me crazy because they present these like micro issues that are still issues. They are important. And if there's bad things in our foods, we should get rid of them. I agree. But to pretend like this is going to solve the autism and ADHD and obesity crisis, like get the f out of here.
Destiny's excoriation of such misguided priorities is nothing short of the vox clamantis amidst an epistemological wasteland, an arid desert where solutions wilt under the scorching rays of asinine hyperfixation. It beggars belief. Nay, it insults ratio itself, that amidst America's morbid crisis of adiposity and caloric excess, we must endure an interminable soliloquy on fumarates, bromides, and other esoteric malefactors plucked from the aether. Imagine a battlefield where soldiers bleed out in torrents, yet the medics quibble over the quality of the gauze. Such is RFK's crusade for nutritional minutiae in the face of planetary-scale macro-calamities. His war cries against toxic micro-ingredients are not mendacia per se, but they hover perilously close to the sophismata minora, half-truths weaponized for their impressio magnifica. To decode Destiny's exasperation, one must understand the basic ordo salutis, the hierarchy of human health. At its zenith lies the unholy trinity of genetica, alimentaria macro principia, and corporis activitas. These pillars are the immovable fundamentum of corporeal well-being. In plainer terms, alas, what one eats, how much one moves, and the genes one inherits constitute the overwhelming determinants of physical sanitas. To ignore these bedrock realities in favor of peripheral toxins is akin to ignis fatuus, chasing will-o'-the-wisps while the forest burns. RFK's fixation on molecular malevolence contributes not merely to misunderstanding, but to magnitude misallocata, a cardinal sin in the Church of Rational Proportion. The concern for obscure toxins, those infinitesimal traces of carcinogens lurking like specters in the pantry, obliterates the far larger culprit that looms monstrous and undeniable, the tidal deluge of hyperprocessum elementum drowning the collective vis corporis of America. If the diet is a canvas, macros, calories, proteins, fats, carbohydrates are its base coat, and yet RFK insists on pointing to a single droplet of crimson amidst a sea of muddied black. Destiny's critique, therefore, is not a dismissal of minima veritas. The idea that toxins or additives may hold negativum potestas is not rejected outright. No, the issue lies in RFK's quixotic conflation of peripheral problems with existential plagues. America teeters on the precipice of systemic obesity, where sugar is consumed with ecclesiastical zeal, yet RFK sermonizes about brominated flame retardants and synthetic dyes as if they are the archons of doom. Ridiculous ad nauseam! If he possesses such fervor, one can only wish he might redirect it toward implementing a draconian sugar tax, a policy whose efficacy would eclipse his lex toxica 1,000-fold. The irony is not lost. Were RFK's micro-obsessions enacted en masse, where every last additive banished to the bowels of Tartarus, it would barely amount to a fractional dent in America's morbus crassitudinous. Destiny, with the clinical precision of a logikos machinator, dismantles this charade, reminding us that magnitude matters. To conflate the carcinogenicity of infinitesimal molecules with the apocalyptic ubiquity of sugar-soaked foods is to commit errore magnitudinis, a fallacy of scale so egregious it borders on intellectual malpractice. And what of the rhetoric itself? Here lies the rub. RFK Jr.'s polemics are not merely incorrect, but insidiously seductiva. Wrapped in the veneer of scientific diction, his micro-crusade resonates with an audience desperate for easy villains and tractable solutions. It is easier to abhor a die artificialist than to face the unflinching veritas magna that health is forged not through esoteric eliminations, but through Herculean discipline. Fewer calories, more movement, less sugar, and, dare I say, mens sana in corpore sano. Yet RFK's fervor, misplaced though it may be, would not be so irksome were it not amplified by a legion of discipuli creduli. The magnification of minutiae becomes gospel to the credulous, who brandish studies and obscure data as though they were the tablets of Mount Sinai. And so, Destiny finds himself in a futile skirmish against numeri falsi et interpretationis contortes. His opponents, like nutritional Yasuo invincibles, deploy endless whataboutisms and pedantic references to articles of dubious auctoritas. Let us pause to contemplate. What is the cumulative effect of RFK's nutritional deceptio magnifica? It is nothing less than the wholesale distraction of a populace desperate for solutions. Rather than galvanizing systemic change, policy-driven interventions like sugar taxes or exercise initiatives, his rhetorical pyrotechnica leaves the audience lost in a labyrinth of toxica trivia. The obesity epidemic rages unabated, its flames fanned by ultra-processed foods and caloric gluttony, while RFK's disciples wage war on red dye Nobber 27. The tragic irony grows deeper still. For even as RFK champions his toxin crusade, he unwittingly exacerbates the very chaos he claims to combat. His hyperfixation, as Destiny astutely observes, provides cover for systemic issues, allowing the corporations of alimentum peccatum to continue their calorie-laden conquest while attention is diverted to microscopic phantoms. A poisoned chalice is passed, detoxious in name but ignorance in substance. And yet, there remains an insidious beauty in RFK's rhetorical alchemy. He wields pseudo-veritas with the deftness of a sophist, couching minor truths in the gilded armor of major revelations. But Destiny, unfazed by this ars mendaciarum, cuts through the performance with surgical clarity. He does not deny toxins matter, he merely reminds us they are fleas on the elephantine carcass of America's dietary dysfunction. In the end, Destiny's frustration is not merely intellectual, but anima profunda, the exasperation of a man pleading for rationality in a discourse swallowed by micro-absurditas. He points us back to the obvious, the unglamorous, the veritas major. Eat less, move more, sleep better. A message as simple as it is profound, yet one rendered inaudible amidst the cacophony of RFK's molecular witch hunt. The magnum mendacium of disproportionate focus must be shattered, for until it is, America will remain a nation drowning in calorica mortis, obsessing over ghosts while the real monsters feast.